Hey everybody, Qroo here. Welcome to the channel. Today's video was inspired by an interaction I had with one of the members of my private learning group, the Qroo Spanish Crew. A lot of interaction with the folks there. There's a forum there where we all communicate, and there's also private messages, things like that. And she said, you're always encouraging us to translate during the day. If we say something in English or think something, to question ourselves and be like, how would I do that in Spanish? Well, she said I was doing that, and the sentence in my head was, I keep thinking about what you said. And she goes, I didn't know how to say to keep doing something. So I went, plugged it in to DeepL, that's a translator, and I got, sigo pensando en lo que dijiste. And she said, there were a lot of things with that sentence that just puzzled me. First thing, right up there in front, I looked up sigo, and it comes from the verb seguir, which means to follow. So I'm like, I follow thinking? And she goes, that was already throwing me off. And then when I'm thinking about something, I thought about would be like sobre or de, and this is an N. And the next thing that kind of threw me off was that lo que. Why is that lo there? And she says, you know what? I just got so frustrated. And I'm like, am I ever going to understand this language? Am I ever going to be able to speak Spanish the way I want to? Yes. And let's take a look at that sentence. And it's what inspired this video. It's about patterns. There's 3 patterns in there. And when you learn patterns in Spanish, as an English-speaking adult, you can apply those patterns to make up your own sentences. So what do I mean by patterns? Well, let's start right up there. If we literally translate this, yes, it says, I follow thinking, which doesn't make any sense, right? But if you understand this pattern, seguir, and that's our verb to follow, plus the Spanish gerund, gerundio, that's what we have here with pensando, that combination means to keep doing something, whatever that gerund is. So sigo pensando is I keep thinking. So now that you've seen that pattern, you're going to resist the temptation to try to break it down and translate individual words. You're going to see that a lot in Spanish. You're going to see collections of words that have a particular meaning when taken together, and you can't break them up. I recently released a book about this. I call it 120 Locuciones. And there's all these little type of phrases, and some are verbs, some aren't. Just little things you can pop into your Spanish as like a set phrase that has a set meaning. Now, if you decide to get one of those, it's not free, but it does help support the channel. It's $7. There's a link to it in the description section. Let's get back to this, though. So that's our pattern, okay? Seguir plus the Spanish gerund. If you don't know what the Spanish gerund is, that's like our ing ending in English. And in Spanish, it would be for AR verbs, the ando. We drop AR, just do ando. For example, hablar, to speak, would become hablando. And for verbs ending in ER and IR, we drop those endings and we put yendo. Escribir, to write, would be escribiendo. Okay? Now, there are some irregulars and some spelling changes here and there, but that's basically how that works. Now, if you don't know how to conjugate the verb seguir in the present tense, and you're going to be using this mostly, I would say, in the present tense, you can pop over to wordreference.com. You can put any verb in there and see how it's conjugated in every single form. So here's seguir. First person is irregular, sigo. So if you wanted to practice it, you could just keep coming up with sentences like, I keep studying, sigo estudiando. I keep practicing Spanish, sigo practicando español. Make up your own sentences all day. So let's get back to the sentence, that kicked this whole thing off, okay? So we have our first part, sigo pensando, I keep thinking. Now, the other question she had was about that en. Why is it not sobre for about, or de if I'm thinking about something? Well, this actually comes down to another pattern, and it has to do with that verb, pensar, to think. When you learn verbs in Spanish, it's a good idea to learn them with the preposition that they're commonly used with, so you always use the correct preposition because it may not match English. This is a great example of this. To think about someone or something is pensar en. It's always going to be en. So if you know that, if you're familiar with that pattern, you're not going to have any trouble using en because you're just used to doing it. I keep thinking about the party. Sigo pensando en la fiesta. So that's our second pattern. Let's look at that lo que. That was the other thing that threw her off. Well, why is that lo there? Well, it's another pattern. Lo que is used all through the Spanish language. We just see it as a set phrase. Okay, these two words working together mean the thing that which, and it's also how we would translate the English word what that's not the question what, which is what we have here. I keep thinking about what you said. When you have that in English, that's not the question what, then lo que is probably what you're going to need in there. So we have 3 separate patterns, and you may have learned these separately and put them in your Spanish toolbox, right? And then when you're making sentences like this, what you're doing is you're popping these little patterns and phrases together to say whatever you want to say. So I tell the member all these things to break it down into little patterns, and suddenly she's like, you know what? Now that makes sense. That makes sense, you know, why it's follows, and why that N is there, and why lo que. And now I understand these little patterns, and I can tweak them, and I can make my own sentences using them. Yes, that's exactly how this works. So you can even play with this little sentence starter, which I think, when I say sentence starter, I keep thinking about something I think is a great sentence starter. So I keep thinking about what happened yesterday. Can you do that one? I keep thinking about what happened yesterday. Now you might be like, okay, what if I don't know how to say something like I don't know how to say to happen? Well, just go look up that one word. Go to wordreference.com or one of those other dictionaries and just look that up. You take this word and you can pop it into your patterns. Now, if you need to do that, go ahead and do that. If you don't, go ahead and you spit out your answer. You're probably like, I've been trying, Paul. Just shut up for a second. Okay. Are you ready? Sigo pensando en lo que pasó ayer. So I use the verb pasar for to happen. It's a very common way to say that something happened. Maybe you chose suceder. Okay. Sigo pensando en lo que sucedió ayer. A little harder to say. I probably wouldn't have gone that route. Another one could have been ocurrir. Rolling R in there for you folks who just like to challenge yourself. Sigo pensando en lo que ocurrió ayer. I like pasó. I definitely stick with pasó. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.